Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Destiny Awaits podcast. I am Andrea.
And I am Michael.
And we continue on our journey.
That's right.
Through the Sermon on the Mount.
Yeah, get it.
It has been a very busy week for me. So I'm feeling a little unprepared. Although I did prepare, but just not as formally.
Yeah, I did a little bit of preparation.
I also did a little, actually, let me see if I can access it here because I had it on my phone. So I'll pull up some stuff that I did and jot down. All right. So today we're finally getting into chapter 6.
Yeah.
That means I believe this is episode 15, which means we spent 14 episodes.
Wow, that's a lot of episodes.
On chapter 5 of Matthew.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's crazy. But there's so much.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing. It's, like I'm going through right now reading the Bible in a year to understand the story. I never thought I would, but I'm doing it for a specific reason. But Sermon on the Mount is a beautiful example of how you can just stay in the same place over and over again and still get so much out of it.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the most impactful areas of Scripture, for sure. There's just a lot there. It's really, and even what we're going to talk about today, even though, we're talking about all these different things in the Sermon on the Mount, it's a continuation of Jesus discussing his righteousness and what that looks like in the earth. That's really what the whole Sermon on the Mount is.
Yeah, the Bible
and all
Project
its variations.
Yeah, the Bible Project calls it like the greater righteousness. What does the greater righteousness look like? But when I started this, it was not planned. I just happened to read it in the Message translation, and then that kind of brought up all this stuff. So it's not like we planned to do this series.
No.
But here we are, 15-week-ish later.
Yeah.
And you're still here with me every episode.
Yeah,
So
haven't kicked me out yet.
Not yet, because I love having you here. You just bring a lot more to it. So what have you gotten out of this, like this impromptu deep dive into the Sermon on the Mount? Like, what would you say was one of or two of the most impactful parts of the sermon?
Wow, that's a loaded question. I think that one of the things that's important to understand when it comes to the Sermon on the Mount is it's not a new law. It's not a new law. It's not a list of new rules. I think too many teachers today teach it as this whole new list of rules that we have to try to live by.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
And when that happens, when you turn your head, I can hear you go silent. When that happens, it almost puts like a weight on you that you feel like you can never live up to. And the second thing I think that is important going along with that is the Sermon on the Mount is actually doing the opposite of rules. It's teaching a way of authentic living. It's your real self, and it's teaching you to be real and come from the heart. So under the law, it was obedience to rules. Under Christ, it's about your heart. Is it coming from the heart? Because if it's not coming from the heart, it really doesn't have the value.
Right.
And because under the Jewish law, you didn't have to have the heart. You just obeyed the rules, and the results were the same.
Right.
Under Jesus, if it doesn't come from a place of purity, if it doesn't come from a place of heart, nothing gets accomplished. So it's actually the opposite of a whole new list of rules that are nearly impossible to reach.
Yeah.
It's a call to go into his righteousness and live a completely different way, authentically.
Right.
It's a call for transformation too.
What was interesting was, as I, in my morning time, in addition to reading the Bible in a year, I was, I always go into the Sermon on the Mount, and I was focusing on these passages. And I remembered that in my book, The Journey here, shameless plug, very shameless. I'm not ashamed. Very proud of this book, actually. I had written about the Sermon on the Mount, and I have a whole chapter about it. And what I focused on, I remembered what the title was. And I thought, let me go read what I wrote, because I remember when I read the Sermon on the Mount the first time straight through without stopping, like without looking at the chapter numbers or the verse numbers or the divisions that they have, right? I remember so clearly the effect it had on me, because all these little stories and parables that I've heard over my lifetime that were always taught separately, now I saw how they all came together.
Right.
Together, like what Jesus was trying to say. There was an underlying message that's often missed when you split out the teachings.
Yeah.
And in all fairness, recognizing that in this podcast, we are separating out different teachings. But I always encourage people to read the Sermon on the Mount straight through.
Yeah.
And when I went into my chapter in the book, I actually read it and I thought, wow, this is so good. I should read my stuff more often. And I'm going to read a little bit from it.
Okay.
But one of the things I did too was there's a few teenagers who've been asking questions about prayer and Bible and that kind of stuff. So, including our kids. So I wound up buying them all Bibles.
Okay. King James Version?
No, because I wanted them to read it. Wow. They said how they're like, why does it sound like Shakespeare? Sending teenagers straight to hell,
not buying them King James Version Bibles.
I know, it's a shame. But Anna was like, they're in school.
That was a joke.
Yes. In her English class, she's been reading Shakespeare.
Okay.
And Anna's pretty poetic, so she can pick up the meaning. But she was like, when I read the Bible, I don't want to read Shakespeare. I don't want it to be that difficult to understand.
Yeah.
So I got them the Message Bible because I felt, even though there are some things that I'm like, ugh, as someone who likes to study the Bible, I'm like, ugh. But I just felt like from a story perspective, it's good. So
that is a great way to read the Bible, though, from a Shakespearean play perspective, actually.
And why would we do that, though?
Because so much of the scripture is literary,
it's
poetic
and
poetic, and you're having to read the story behind the story.
Mm-hmm.
So treating scripture like a play, I think it was N.T. Wright that said that, is
okay.
I didn't come up with that. It's actually a very good thing to do.
But what Anna was saying was more so like it being so difficult to understand, and so I have the girls on a mission.
So you got them the Message Bible?
I got them the Message Bible.
Okay.
With little cool gel highlighters because they like to highlight and all that stuff. So I sent them all on a mission, and because they were asking like, what should I read in the Bible? And I'm on the hunt for a really good devotional. So for those of you who are watching, if you know an excellent devotional for teens that has good theology in it, recommend it in the comments below, because
why don't you
I'm on the
create
hunch.
One?
Because I'm so busy doing other things that I just don't have the time.
I think the Proverbs would be a great devotional for teens.
I do too. I'm going to write one. And actually,
your Proverbs one you're doing now would be a good one.
The Proverbs 31, yes, it is a good one. I did well, people don't know this. You don't know this. I've mentioned it here and there, but I don't talk about it. I am writing a 365-day devotional on Proverbs.
Oh, okay.
But that's obviously a huge project. Just, another thing that I'm going to add to my list. But anyway, I have the girls on this journey of going through. I was like, okay, I want you guys to read the Sermon on the Mount. You have to read it straight through. You can't stop. You can't read chapter 5, then read chapter. Like, you have to read the whole thing. So when you have time, ignore the numbers, ignore the titles, just try your best to read it through. And then in the end, I want you to tell me what the theme is. So Alicia already did it.
Of course, overachieving.
My little perfectionist. And I walk into her room and she's got the Bible open and her little markers. And literally I see like a bunch of colors, like the whole thing highlighted. Basically, she goes, wow, this translation is just so poetic. It makes so much, it's just so good. And I'm just like, that is what I love. Like, it's true. It is so good. And the fact that a teenager recognizes it
Right.
is so good. So I asked her and she said, basically, it's all about the heart.
Yeah.
It's about your intention. And I said, okay, because I told them, I said, when I read it, I see this theme or two themes, but I want to see what a teenager would see.
Yeah.
Would they see it different? Do they read into it? So Alicia saw it. So they're in the postseason of wrestling. So Anna's been reading a book that's helping her focus on the championship and stuff. So
yeah, maybe eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth would really.
She'd go in there and be like, no, I don't want to wrestle you. I'll just stand here.
Whoever strikes you.
That's the Old Testament. She'd be like, I'd rather live by the Old Testament rules. Anna probably would, to be honest. She probably would. Okay, so let me read, before I read this here, I want to read the Message, because I actually love the Message translation of how chapter 6 starts.
Okay. Are we doing 1 through 4 today?
We'll do primarily, yeah. That's what we'll focus on. I think we'll touch on a little bit because the next big section, it
Private prayer.
kind of all goes together.
Yeah.
And there, I see it as a sandwich, and I'll share what that is. And then we'll deep dive into like prayer and fasting in separate episodes. But we'll probably touch on it today because it kind of all goes. So Matthew 6, and I'll read the 1 through 4 first. It says, be especially careful when you're trying to be good so that you don't make a performance out of it. It might be good theater, but the God who made you won't be applauding. When you do something for someone else, don't call attention to yourself. You've seen them in action. I'm sure play actors, I call them, treating prayer meeting and street corner alike as a stage, acting compassionate as long as someone is watching, playing the crowds. They get applause, true, but that's all they get. When you help someone out, don't think about how it looks. Just do it quietly and unobtrusively. That is the way your God, who conceived you in love, working behind the scenes, helps you out.
Wow. I can wrap this whole Bible study up right now then. Just simply stop virtue signaling. Signaling,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Just stop that. You're good to go. All right, having a good day, guys.
What translation do you have?
I have 2 of them right now. I think I'm going to read NIV today.
Okay.
Just kind of change it up. I kind of like the way they said it. Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets, to be honored by others. Truly I tell you, they have their reward in full. But when you give to the needy, Do not let your left hand know what the right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you.
In secret.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Does it have the word hypocrite in your translation?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yeah, I read it.
Okay, can you read it again?
Do not announce it with the trumpets as the hypocrites do in
Okay.
the synagogues.
Okay. The reason I'm asking is because you know that I'm big into words, defining words. We've done that over and over on this podcast. And the word hypocrite is one that I want to highlight right now.
Okay.
Because when you think of the word hypocrite, what do you, like, how would you define hypocrisy?
Well, I'm going to ruin it for you if you ask me, because I'm going to go the same direction you're going to go with it.
Yeah, but how would you, like, in life, like, how do people define hypocrisy?
So,
Because now it's different for me from a biblical perspective, but.
Yeah, so are you asking from like the way normal Christians define
Yeah,
it? I would say
people-
most people define it as somebody who says one thing and does another.
Yeah. That's
That's the standard.
that's how I've always
Right.
viewed it.
Yeah.
But then it was pointed out to me when we're reading this, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a little bit of a conflict with that definition.
A little bit, yeah.
And what's the conflict?
Well, I don't know what conflict you're talking about, but the way I see hypocrite is the word, it's a Greek word, by the way, hypocrite or whatever.
Okay.
And it's a Greek word that literally means, and I thought it was interesting that the Message Bible picked up on this. It literally means acting.
Right. An
So
actor.
It's an actor. It's somebody who, in an actor, it gives the reality. I mean, actors shoot each other and do all these things, but nobody's actually dying unless you're one particular actor recently. But you know what I mean? Like intentionally. They go out and they act, but there's no real heartfult meaning behind it.
It's not real.
whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I think that, I mean, yeah, I'll hold off until you're ready for me to go deeper with that. But acting, that's the key.
The conflict that I would see here is Jesus points out here right now, he talks about giving.
Yep.
Right? And then he's going to talk about prayer, and then he's going to talk about fasting, all in the same context. Like,
right.
Don't go around virtue signaling and,
It's hard word to
announcing out what you're doing so that everyone can see, and only doing it because people are watching you.
Yeah.
Right? Now, if you look at the definition of hypocrite and you define it as you do one thing, you say one thing and do another, that doesn't really apply here.
No.
Because Jesus is talking about people, you're actually doing what you're supposed to do. You're actually doing a good thing. You're doing what's right.
Yeah.
You're doing what you should be doing, like the Pharisees.
Yeah.
The Pharisees, it's not like they were going around telling people to pray and not praying. Or
Right.
to give and not giving. No,
Yeah.
they were doing those things, yet Jesus was still calling them hypocrites and vipers. Why? Because it became a religious performance.
Yep.
It became
It
for
was acting.
show. It wasn't coming from the heart.
It was theater.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was a way of virtue signaling, self-righteousness.
Yeah, it was a way to build yourself up and put yourself on a pedestal.
Right.
To say, hey, I'm holier than everyone else. I do all these things. Look at me.
Right.
I'm the focus. You're making yourself the focus.
Right.
You literally are making yourself a celebrity among the people. You're putting yourself up at a higher level. They would even go as far as to, when they were about to do this, they would get out the shofars and start blowing their trumpets.
The trumpets, yeah.
And to let everyone know that they're about to give.
Look at the great deeds that we're doing. But, in a way, that kind of happens today.
Yeah. They do.
And one of the things that's really dangerous with religious piety and actions
Mm-hmm.
is that sometimes the person or the people don't even realize that it's hypocrisy. And when I say that, I mean hypocrisy from the biblical perspective. So I'm not talking about saying one thing and doing another. I'm talking about the way Jesus is defining hypocrisy right now,
Yeah.
in the sense of your heart and your intention aren't there. You're not doing it to honor God. You're not doing it to love on your neighbor. You're doing it to get attention. And like here, it says, if what you want is the applause from the crowd, then great, you're going to get it.
Yeah, Jewish piety, since you brought it up, some people may not know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
And that is referring to the religious devotion and faithfulness and moral conduct of the life that is lived in accordance with the Jewish beliefs, the traditions, the laws, both inward spiritual and how they oriented it
Mm-hmm.
towards God. So it was kind of a big practice, right? And it was throughout the Hebrew Bible and over through the centuries, Jewish thought, piety, and Judaism was not merely about like ritual observance, but it also involved the proper context was holistic. It was a holistic living justly, ethically, righteously.
Mm-hmm.
That's the piety, and this giving, this displaying your righteousness merely to be seen by men was that piety that you spoke of. I
Right.
thought that would be important to point that out because people may not know what piety means.
Yeah, it is a very churchy word, I guess. But yeah, when I look at that, I couldn't help but think about when I had my encounter with God, you also were going through a journey of your own with God. We kind of were like on our own paths, but together, right?
Yeah.
And you actually took me to an event that was very supernatural in nature. It was something I had never, I'm not going to say never because I had experienced things like that when I was younger, but it had been many, many years, and it was very evangelistic in nature.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, we started going out in the streets, and, some people call it power evangelism. There's tons of names for prophetic evangelism, stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. And some people took that and kind of started a ministry from it. And now their ministry is kind of based on either street evangelism or deliverance ministry or something prophetic, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of things that wind up getting recorded while they're out there on the streets.
Yeah.
And when we had Jesus House, when we would have like in-person meetings, we had live streamed a few times, especially when we were in the Mandarin House.
Yeah.
But then we stopped.
Yeah.
And I just think that, in my opinion, there are things that are sacred, and we should give people the freedom to experience God and have intimate moments without a camera being in their face.
Yeah.
Now, this is I recognize this as a very personal opinion. There are times where I'm okay with it. Every case is a case, but there's things that I just think we have to be more sensitive in. With all of that being said, a lot of people have their own ministries based on these things. You'll see them go out evangelizing with a camera, and they record things, or they share like, oh, I talked to 5 people about Jesus today, and And then even when someone rejects them, they post about it and all this stuff. And I've been down that road and I've talked about that journey for me. But sometimes I wonder, if you didn't have that camera, would you still go do that?
Yeah, I mean, I see what you're doing here. You're comparing the prophetic evangelism to the almsgiving, or what the Jewish word is known as tzedakah, the giving to the poor. And they're doing the prophetic evangelism, they're doing the praying for others. Some of them are doing it for that recognition, right? For the camera, for everyone to see them. Now there's the other side of that, if you will, where people say, well, I have the camera so I can encourage other people to do it and show other people how to do it. That's what I was
going to say. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, you have that other side that I think is legitimate in some cases.
And that I was going to say, I know that if I were to ask most of them, if not all, they would be like, well,
I mean, we're on a podcast right now.
I'm just encouraging I'm encouraging people's faith and teaching them how to do it. And I get that. And it's like, you and I have had conversations about deliverance ministries and the reliance that those ministries have on demonic possession, just like on prophetic ministries, and having to depend on God giving you specific words for people every single time, like on demand. And I just don't agree with that.
Yeah.
So with these type of ministries, this is why I say, even with hypocrisy and with piety, is on the outside, it seems noble. We're going out, we're evangelizing, we're delivering people, we're healing people, we're doing all this stuff. It looks good, and it is what we're supposed to do. But oftentimes I think we need to take a moment when we do share something and just ask, why am I really sharing this?
Yeah. So you're saying, you're kind of comparing that to the acts of righteousness that the Jews did, like prayer, fasting, almsgiving, that kind of stuff.
I just think, and I say that because I'm someone who, since I was young, whatever, known as a goody two-shoe, I've always been that, the good girl, whatever. I'm a rule follower, as you know, and I've always tried to do what's right. And even when we would go evangelizing all this stuff, I would go. I liked it. It's not like I didn't. But I, at one point, got to a place where I realized I'm not doing this because I love the person I'm talking to. I'm doing it because I know that I have the power to heal them, and I want to exercise my power. And if I do, I then can tell people what I did, and that they can go do it too. And I just don't see that as a right motive.
Yeah, no, I would say it's not. That's literally what he's talking about here, not doing your tzedakah for your own acclaim, right?
Yeah.
But genuine. You want to have genuine devotion. It needs to come from the heart. And we're going away from acts of rules and following the rules and physical acts, where that's all that matters, to a heart-based life, right?
Yeah, I think it's just
because if you think about a lot of big ministers that are out there, I mean, everything they do is on camera, and they're doing it because they're claiming they're reaching people, and I think maybe some of them are, but they really quickly could roll over to actors or pretenders. Mm-hmm. Like I think about some of the prophetic people who recently have been accused of all kinds of stuff. And, instead of doing words of knowledge, Googling people and things like that. And I don't know if that's true or not. But the reality is, when you have someone who has a prophetic gift and you're telling them, hey, go out there and do something. Go out there and give a word of knowledge, give a word of faith, give this, give that.
Like there's an on switch.
Start teaching them to be like, wow, watch this monkey do a trick. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, and you start treating the
that
prophetic.
happens with the prophets a lot.
Happens with the prophets a lot. Like, go prophesy. Pick up the phone, call the guy, prophesy. When you start doing that, there's a lot of pressure put on them to perform. And if they perform like that, you know, what is the heart behind it? Are they really doing it to help someone? Are they doing it for notoriety? Are they doing it to show off? Are they showing off their gift? And that's where that is, now you're acting, right? You're an actor.
Yeah, that's true.
That's hypocrisy at the highest level.
I mean, I'm a very self-aware person, and I check my heart a lot. You know, like I said, I mean, if you like evangelism, you go out and you video yourself all the time. Would you still do it if there was no video, if you didn't have a crowd, if there was no one watching? Would you still do those things? I think we always start off with good intentions. Like, we would go out power evangelizing, we would invite people, and we would do things. We weren't necessarily the type to video, but we would call people along. So then the question is, would we go if no one was coming? And the answer was yes. There were times we would just take the family and we would go out and do it.
No, I did it a lot by myself.
Right.
Actually.
And I would go. There were times at lunchtime I would go to the mall when we lived in Mandarin. I would go over and I would do it by myself, or I would go around the mall and pray by myself. You know, and even this podcast, studying the Bible, you know, obviously I'm doing it because we have the podcast, but if we didn't have the podcast, it's something I would still do.
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest miracles I ever saw, I never actually saw, and no one else did either because there was no video or anything.
Let me see if it's what I think.
No, I prayed for this guy who had stage 4
Oh.
cancer. He was terminal. He was at the airport. And I prayed for him, and he emailed me a couple of years later. He was actually on his way to Disney World because he wasn't going to have much longer to live. So he figured, I've always wanted to go to Disney World. So Disney World was his last stop, and then he was going to go back to Ireland and die.
Right.
Well, he emailed me about a year later and was like, you know, I'm alive. I'm healed.
Where did you? Was at the airport, right?
Yeah, I was at the airport in Orlando. You know, you prayed for me. I was healed, and I'm still alive. And he just wanted to let me know. And it was weird because all I did was pray for him, and that was it. There was no, he didn't start glowing.
You didn't do from a 1 to 10.
No, I didn't.
Your pain
No, it was pretty hard to do. It was like he was dying.
Right. Yeah.
We were standing in line at a food court in like a food line to get stuff at the airport. So it was pretty quick, pretty short. I'd given him my card that had my email, and he ended up emailing me like a year later. But that was it.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen I literally saw a tumor on an arm go down once. We've had demons talk to us I've had demons talk to me on the street multiple times. It's like,
yeah, there was no camera.
It's like a thing that happens. And so I think
they were either demons or crazy people, but they were talking.
Oh no, these were demons. Like it's so obvious when it is versus a crazy. I get crazy people talk to me all the time.
Their voice changes.
Their voice changes, but it's the things that they say to you.
Yeah,
it's not a crazy person.
There's no way a human could know the things that they say to you.
Yeah. So I'm saying that because I want people to recognize that Mike and I are, I'm going to use this word loosely, but like charismatic. We believe in the supernatural. We believe in the giftings. We believe, I'm going to use this term loosely too, the fivefold ministry. We believe in all those things. It's just that we value the fruit of the Spirit, character and integrity as well.
Yeah.
And they have to walk line in line. Today when we look at this, when we move on, I think I want to just stay here today, and not move on. But it talks about prayer. It says, go into your closet and pray. And let me see if it says here so I can read it real quick. Oh, let me just read this part about the prayer. This is Matthew 5:6 and verse 6 in the Message Bible. Here's what I want you to do. Find a quiet, secluded place so you won't be tempted to role play before God. Just be there as simply and honestly as you can manage. The focus will shift from you to God, and you will begin to sense His grace.
Yeah.
And that's, I think today, what I really want to encourage everyone to do, and you and I to do. Like I said, the Sermon on the Mount has been very convicting to me in many ways. It's made me aware, not in a condemning way, of the things I fall short in.
Yeah.
Definitely with these passages, check my heart. Why am I doing this? Why am I saying that? Why am I posting this?
Yeah.
I think we need a lot more of that on social media.
Well, so original context, of course, we're talking about the Zedekiah. Actually, I said that wrong. Zedekiah.
Here we go again.
Right.
You're not
It's
even saying
like
it right when you do that.
It's TS. Like there's no Z. It's like cats. So Zedekiah. I actually had it broken down phonetically for me. So yeah, it's Zedekiah, and the D is pronounced, so it's Zedekiah.
Okay.
But the Zedekiah of God, which was something that was a very big deal for the Hebrews, there was a huge problem going on. And the problem is we had the Pharisees, we had the Sadducees, we had all these different groups of people, and they all knew the rules. And the rules were you gave to the poor, you gave your Zedekiah, you did your Zedekiah.
What's Zedekiah?
Zedekiah is almsgiving. It's giving to the poor. It's prayer. It's
I thought
fasting.
It was a crier. I thought it was a cry.
That's Zedekiah. No, this is Zedekiah. It's different. Zedekiah is the cry.
Okay.
Zedekiah is different.
It sounds the same, but I'll just pretend like I can tell the difference.
It's TS.
Okay.
Okay. And it's all the prayer, fasting. It's all the things that you do. And it was often done in public because the temple
they were
was
community.
in public.
Yeah, they were community.
The poor were in the square. How else are you going to give to them?
Right.
You know what I mean? And then they would blow their horn as they gave to the poor, and it was a big deal.
I would go to Penn Station in Newark and do that.
They would parade around. I know, but
Not
I'm talking
blow
about
the trumpets.
I'm talking about original context here. And so the Jewish people had created this rule or this law and this way of living. They only ever did anything good unless it was in front of everybody so everyone could see it so they could be recognized for it. And Jesus was saying, guys, it wasn't really about, we look at some of these writings and we go, okay, be careful not to display your righteousness merely to be seen by people. Fast forward to today's context. We read that and we go, we can't do righteousness in front of people.
That's not what it says, though.
I know, but we start to think that way. Like, we
Right.
shouldn't do righteousness because we're in front of people. We need to do our righteousness in secret. And it really has nothing to do with that. It's about the intent of your heart.
Yes, it says, do not do it to be seen by people.
It's about you can do it in front of people if you want, or you can do it in quiet, in the secret if you want. It's not about in secret or public or not, or on camera or not on camera or any of that. It's about the heart. Why are you doing it? That's what Jesus was getting to. And the problem that the Zedekiah was happening, the Jewish people were having with this Zedekiah, is they had become hypocrites. They were just acting. It was like doing a play. It was like a ritual. It was totally a ritual. He said, don't blow the trumpet. Obviously, they were blowing the trumpet to let everyone know they were about to do something good, right? They were doing it for the prayer. They were doing it for the fasting. They were doing it for the alms. They were doing it for giving to the poor. And it was a huge issue in Second Temple Judaism. And everything was for a show. The whole religion was for a show.
Right.
And it was all about, look at me, I'm important.
Well, it's self-righteousness.
Yeah.
In essence.
So in other words, when we read 6:3 and it says, when you do your giving, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. Guys, that's hyperbole, right?
Right.
It's not that you need to hide what you gave. It's
Am I supposed
are
to?
you giving from the right heart?
Of course it's hyperbole, because how do you not? My hands don't talk.
Yeah, like you don't have to hide your giving, and if you hide your giving, it's not suddenly more righteous.
Right.
It's about, are you giving from the right heart?
Mm-hmm.
Do you actually want to give? And are you willing to give without anyone knowing that you give? That may be part of it. Like if you are a prideful person and you do have a look at me type personality, kind of like myself, right? If you have that look at me, I'm so special personality, then maybe you should hide some of your righteousness,
right,
so that you're not, that's a you issue at that point. But really what Jesus is getting to the heart of is just like, it's no different than, we could go back to any of these verses. Do not commit adultery, you've heard, do not murder.
It is all that.
Blessed are
it's
those that
all
mourn,
about the heart.
blessed are those that meek. This is all about a completely different way of living.
It's not about the outward.
No.
It's about the inward. It's about the heart, where everything comes from. Proverbs says how the heart is the springhead of life.
Yeah, because there was specific rules, like whoever is kind to the poor lends to the Lord. So there was very specific blessings that come from those. It's a law that God created and he placed within humanity, and the Jews were very good at it. In fact, they're still very good at it. Some of the most charitable people on earth. And there's a law that when you give, you receive, and they know that law, and they do it well.
Even heathens know that law.
They know that law very, very well. And those that give the most have the most power and the most authority. And Jesus is challenging them to not betray that law, because it's a very real law. It's the law of humanity. I believe God created it, placed it in the earth as a reaping and sowing type thing that continues to this day. And it's a very real thing. If you give, you will receive. That's how that works. And he's saying, do it out of a right heart, though. Do it unto the Lord. Don't do it just to receive. Don't do it just to have glory before men. Don't do it just to look like you're awesome. Do it because you have a right heart, because you really love.
Well, when you read this, right, what I kind of see the next few sections is essentially saying, if what you want is recognition from humans, that you're holy, that you're religious, that you're a good person, that you're nice, then good, you'll get that. You will be recognized as a good person. You'll get the applause, but that's all you'll get.
Yeah.
It's very very at that level. And then it's interesting because right after there's the fasting, and then sandwiched right after that, it talks about how we need to store up treasures in heaven.
Right.
And I just see it interesting that here's this thing of Jesus saying, when you do things, do it for the right reason.
Yeah.
If you're doing it to get the applause of man, right? To me, I see that as that's an earthly treasure. It's something that fades. It's something that can be taken away. It's something that can be stolen. But what you should be doing is storing up treasures in heaven, not treasures on earth. You should care about what God has to say and what God thinks. And is God pleased with you? That's what matters. So while we can look at this and say, okay, I need to have a good heart. I need to do it for right motives. I shouldn't do things just to be recognized. I think the more important lesson, if we're going to have a target, which I'm going to talk about in a second from my book, is the target is what will please God? What will please my Father? How can I have a stronger relationship with him? That's why I love that verse that I read in 6. Because when it talks about going into your prayer closet, it's not about, to your point, it's not about going into your closet, being by yourself so that no one hears you. But it's like, the point is what it says here. When you do that, you're not going to be tempted to role play before God.
Yeah.
Because I grew up in a church where I was, at a very young age, I was the intercession leader. For those of you who don't know, intercession is a prayer group where you pray for other people and all this stuff, right? I guess the best way to say it. I've been praying since I was a young girl. I've been an intercessor, I would say, since I was a young girl. And intercession is something that appeals a lot of times to empathetic people. Okay. I think a lot of people do it wrong. I think a lot of,
Yeah.
I can do a whole teaching on that, what I've learned. But my point is that I was involved in public or community prayer from a very young age. And it is very tempting to role play, to try and have the most beautiful prayer or have the nicest words or have the best prayer, most proper prayer, whatever the case is.
Right.
And here it's saying, when you pray in secret, you're not going to be tempted to do that. And then I loved how it said, and be as honest as you can manage. The focus will shift from you to God.
Yeah.
So in public prayer, I was very comfortable. Like I'm very comfortable with public speaking. So I don't concern myself with that kind of stuff very often.
Yeah.
But when you only pray in public, when you only pray in church, when you only worship in church, you're concerned about what everyone else around you is doing, what they're saying, how they're acting, where their hands, how loud are they singing, is everyone jumping up and down, whatever the case is. But who are you when no one is around?
Yeah.
Right? Be authentic in everything that you do. Who you are in your community setting at your church should look very similar to who you are at home.
Yeah, I used to get in a lot of trouble because
oh boy,
I used to take this to a whole other level, and when
shocker,
you know how the pastor's like, stand up, raise your hands, clap. I wouldn't do it because
at a protest.
If I did it, then I would be doing it
because you were told.
Yeah, I was doing it because I was told. My heart wasn't in it. And it was a public display of just going along with everyone else. So if he said stand up, I would sit. When they clapped, I wouldn't clap.
For me, it's different.
And then they would think I was being rebellious.
Well, see, you were. Because now even if you felt like doing it because they told you to do it, you wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
See, you were rebelling.
Mm-hmm.
I'm of the opinion if you tell me to clap and I feel like clapping, I'll clap. If I don't feel like clapping, I'm just not going to clap.
Yeah, no, I would just not do it because I was just like, it's just a show. They're just playing around. They don't actually feel it. So,
but it wasn't about them. Interested. It's about you.
What?
It's about you. All right. So we're nearing the top of the hour here. So let's finish off this intentions. So I'm going to read a little bit from mile 8 in my book, The Journey, which is called Intentions.
Okay.
And it says, I basically just talk about, first I started off with why I'm talking about this. And then I say, while our actions may appear good, and what I wanted to do with this was, what was I thinking back then and how much have I learned? Was I way off, because revelation over time increases. While our actions may appear good, Jesus reveals that what truly matters is what's happening within our hearts. What are the motives behind our actions? Why are we doing what we do? Jesus exposes something deeper than the law. He shows us that God's focus is in our inner being, the heart. And then I share some quotes and I say, have you ever heard someone say that your intentions don't matter? Have you ever set out to do something good and failed, only to have someone focus on the failed outcome with no regard for your intention? How did it make you feel? I've been in those situations. It feels hopeless when you know that you did it with the best of intentions, but the result wasn't, the best of outcomes. That one failed attempt can feel like no one appreciates it. And even though there are times when our good deeds are appreciated, that one negative outcome can feel like it defines us.
Yeah.
When we believe that our intentions don't matter, we can fall into the trap of perfectionism. Solely focusing on the ideal outcome creates a culture of stress, unrealistic expectations, insecurity, and manipulation. We start to believe that we are only as good as our results, which leads to defeat. But here's the truth. Love, God, cares very much about your intentions. While people may judge us by the outcome, God sees our hearts and our motives. When our hearts are set on Him, He helps guide the outcome, even when it doesn't look like we hit the bullseye every time. And then I give the example that you always share about archery, and like when you're working on archery and you have that bow in your hand, I kind of walk through the process. Everything you do matters, and it's a practice. And I see Jesus as our coach. And what matters is that you take the time to get the proper stance, that your shoulders are in the right position, that your breathing is right, that you're focused on that target, and you pull that bow back, and you feel that tension in that bow. That's the power behind the bow. And you keep your eye on that target the entire time you're positioning yourself, and you release it. And sometimes you're not going to hit the bullseye. And in the beginning, you may not even hit the target at all. But what matters is that you took the time to listen to Jesus, who is your coach, guiding you and teaching you how to be an archer.
Yeah.
Right? It's the intention. And listen, you may miss the target. You may miss the bullseye, but what Jesus cares about, and I say this with the utmost confidence, knowing that God is pleased with what I'm about to say, is that what God is most pleased about is if you took the time to position your heart in the right place. And you may miss it and you may make a mistake, but what matters is that your intentions were sincerely, honestly good. What matters is if God was pleased with you. If you miss a target, Jesus, like a coach, helps you improve your stance and focus. He's not as concerned with how close you were to the bullseye. He cares more about how much you set your heart on Him. He will always be proud of you when you keep your eyes on Him. Even if the arrow falls short, He sees your intention and your willingness to try. And doesn't that give us more hope than hearing that your intentions don't matter? Because when we say to people, intentions don't matter, we're telling them that you need to do the right thing. It doesn't matter how you feel or what you do or where your heart's going. But that's not what the scripture tells us. Throughout the scripture, I have a whole, in the journey, it's literally my journey. And it goes through different lessons and it builds. And before this, I talk about the heart and how God looks at the heart.
Yeah.
And we see this in the story of David and other stories in the Bible over and over. God is saying, I look at your heart. Here in the Sermon on the Mount, God is saying, I look at your heart. But people look at the outside, right? And they judge you for it. But God is looking at our hearts. That is what matters to Him. And this is why, if you know that what you are doing is pleasing to God, who gives a hoot what anybody else has to say?
Yeah, I think it's interesting you brought up the archery thing, because did you know that if you have a bow that is very rigid and has no forgiveness, it's very hard to hit the target. If you have a bow
Interesting.
that has a lot of forgiveness,
Mm-hmm.
it's much easier to operate the bow, shoot the bow, and hit the
Yes.
target.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an actual archery term. So Jesus gave us obviously a lot of forgiveness. Therefore, it should be much easier for us to aim for the target.
Yeah, that's so good. That is so good. I mean, so many things we could offshoot, but we've been here for way too long.
Yep.
So, in the end, know that your intentions matter. It's all about the heart. Don't be a hypocrite. Don't do things just because
Don't be an
it's
actor.
what you think you're supposed to do. Don't read the Bible because you think that's what Christians are supposed to do. Read the Bible because you want to get to know God better. Read the Bible because you want to have a better relationship and have a better understanding of who He is. Don't pray because you feel like you're going to go to hell if you don't. Pray because you want to have a relationship with God. None of these things should feel like I'll be honest with you. None of these things that we would probably consider Christian piety should feel like an obligation. And I grew up feeling very much like it was. And if I didn't do those things, I was going to go to hell. And I do them with...
Well, I grew up, everybody outside of our church was going to hell anyway, so we had no reason to evangelize them.
Yeah, no, but you still had to be perfect because that was the measure. We talked about that last week.
Yes, we did.
But, I can say that reading the Bible, praying, like I do not do it out of obligation. As a matter of fact, on the days that are busy, like today was a busy day, literally very busy all day. I didn't sit down and read my Old Testament today. And it's like it's like it upsets me. It's like, no, I want to read it. It's not like, oh, I have to read it. No, it's like, I want to read it. Maybe I'll put on the audiobook while I'm washing the dishes later or something, And I want everyone to get to that point, I always hear people say, I've been thinking a lot about this week, as I've been so busy this week. Hear people say, I don't have time. Like, no, you make time. You make time for the things that matter.
Yeah.
And getting to know God is important, but your heart's intention is very important. You're better off praying to God, speaking to Him, and inviting Him in while you're doing your dishes than you are to have this obligation to read the Bible and feel like, I don't want to, I don't want to do this or whatever. Like, just have a relationship with God. Self-reflect. Self-reflection is not a bad thing. Mm-hmm. It's a good thing. Don't get stuck there. Like today, I noticed something that I could have done better at work. And I went and told my boss, I failed here. Next time I want to do better. That's how I am with God. I failed here. Next time I want to do better. Self-reflect, because that's how you learn and grow. But also it helps you check your heart. Check your heart. When you're going to go post something on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, ask yourself, why? Why are you doing it? This whole culture of sending indirect messages to one person through your Facebook post, like, grow up. There are literally Christian leaders who do that.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm just like, just stop.
Yeah.
I've had posts that I write.
Mm-hmm.
And then I go, X. I'm not even gonna. I was like, at least I got it out. I wrote it. And then it's like, X. Holy Spirit's like, stop it. Bad. Wrong intention. Don't do that. And that's what we have to do. That's what God wants us to do. So that's the lesson for today.
Yep.
Next week, we'll dive into prayer. It has the Lord's Prayer in there. So I don't know what direction we're going to go. So we'll just play it by ear. But there's a lot of good stuff with that Lord's Prayer. I know my dad had shared with me the Aramaic version of it a while back, and it was so cool. So I'm going to ask him if he can send that to me.
I have it, yeah.
Oh, you have it too?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's super cool. And the Message Bible has like a super cool way of translating it. And there's a few different versions. And I mean, I know people are so opposed to that, but I just love it. I love reading all the different ways because it kind of gives you a fullness of the intention behind what Jesus was saying. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much for being here with us. Let us know what you think. Share your opinions, your ideas. Don't forget to click that thumbs up button, the like button. If you haven't yet, click subscribe so you don't miss any of our future episodes. And we'd love to keep this conversation going with you. We don't like just talking to ourselves. I mean, we do that all the time. We want to talk to you. So we'd love to hear what you have to say in the comments below. Thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you next week. Bye.
Bye.